this morning's webinar, what great thought leadership looks like in 2026, which is rapidly coming upon us. Just a few more shopping days before the holiday season starts. So I will get started very shortly. I'm just checking everything's working here, and it looks like it is. I can see people joining. Thank you. Welcome. If you can hear noises through the window here, we've got sort of renovations are ongoing at Articulate Manor, and hopefully also will be done by Christmas, but it's been a long year of building work. Anyway, so it will start with Peter Bruegel, The Hunters, and great thought leadership in 2026. Welcome. So, few brief parish notices before we start, as usual. Where I'm coming from, I have been a writer and a thought leadership copywriter for more than 25 years, starting as a freelance journalist with Wired and various people like that after selling my computer games company, building Articulate Marketing up, and we've been doing we have written probably 2.5-3 million words for companies like Microsoft and Google and other well-known businesses, and lots of ambitious, smaller, less well-known businesses that we're hoping to make better well-known. There are my lovely colleagues. We do websites, copywriting, branding, and HubSpot automation. So that's us. That's where I'm coming from. If you would like to discuss anything that comes up in today's webinar, I would love to hear from you. There is no live chat. I have no producer support, and it's hard enough to concentrate on what I'm trying to say without having to also live chat. So this is going out live, though. Anything could happen. But do get in touch. Matthew@articulatemarketing.com. I genuinely would love to hear from you if you have questions, comments, feedback. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a very unusual surname. There's only me and 2 other Matthew Stibbers that I know of in the world. You'll know me because I'm the short, bald one. You can book up a 30-minute conversation with me, articulatemarketing.com meet. That is my calendar. Love to chat to you. Okay. There are no planned upcoming webinars. We're reaching the end of this year with a sprint to the finish with this one. There will be 3 or 4 in January. The program will be published on articulatemarketing.com/webinars. Do check in. But if you're here, you'll probably get an email from us anyway. So I'd love to see you in the new year. Right. Let's get started with thought leadership in 2026. I thought it was quite useful since the title has a date in it. I always remember my history tutor at Oxford saying, Matthew, do try and put a few dates in your essays. If you've got a date in the title, you have to think a little bit about the changes of time. What's changed? What's new? What's the same? And I think this year has been, setting aside the geopolitical and economic changes and challenges, from a marketing perspective, an increasing acceleration of fairly long-standing trends, and a lot of that acceleration is coming from AI, but other things have been driving these changes for a long time. AI is more of an accelerant, I think, for these transformations. So first of all, there's huge volumes of content. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, there were 3 TV channels and Teletext and Prestel and 8 or so national newspapers, and that was it. Now, inundated with news and TV and video content. I remember in the sort of mid-2000s talking to people like Microsoft going, we should do a blog. And they were going, a blog? What's that? Tell me about what? I'm exaggerating only slightly, but it was an exciting and novel idea. And now something like 70-80% of businesses have a blog. Whether they maintain it, whether it has interesting content, separate question. 82% of marketers, according to one survey, are actively investing in content marketing. And I know when I started Articulate, the idea of inbound content marketing was somewhat novel. It was around. It wasn't my idea, but it was not a widespread concept. And now it's a must-have. It's table stakes. At the same time, all this content is shortening people's attention spans. People are struggling. I mean, people don't want to watch videos, they want TV shows, they want to watch TikTok, things that last a minute and so on. And people are getting very good at filtering out and deselecting content that they don't want to engage with. So closing emails, scanning websites, scrolling, doom scrolling, marketing scrolling. And those are that's a natural reaction to the increasing volume of content. Also, fewer organic clicks. And I think we've seen for ourselves and for all our clients declining inbound organic traffic before zero click and AI search and AI overviews came along. So this is an accelerating trend that's been around for a while. We used to get 70, 80,000 visits a month to our website. And when I started my blog, I'm just little old me. I had in 2006, I had 40 or 50,000 people coming to my blog every month. You know, it's much harder to get those kinds of volumes now. And you know, the word of the year last year was enshittification. Cory Doctorow's idea that, you know, first you get something for free and then you get turned into the product and you have to pay for things. So, you know, social media, Google, they want you to pay to get eyeballs. They don't want to give you the traffic for free anymore. And again, that is a trend that's accelerating. And all of this is combined with platform fragmentation. So, you know, you've just got this landscape of, you know, fewer eyeballs, less attention, more content, more competition in the landscape, in the marketplace of ideas. Okay, there's also, I think, psychologically, a growing distrust of expertise, and thought leadership sort of relies to some extent on the concept of expertise and objective truth. And yeah, just put this, found this from a previous webinar I did a few years ago, where, you know, when washing the dishes, you know, there are two types of people who load dishwashers, and one lot are Scandinavian architects, possibly my wife, and the other lot are raccoons on crack, and that's me. I'm very lackadaisical. Anyhow, I cited to my wife this article in the New York Times about how you should load your dishwasher like a raccoon on crack, and she said the New York Times doesn't know anything about loading dishwashers. Joking aside, I think we all know what I mean by distrust of expertise, and I think this is something that you have to work harder to overcome. And I think this is a fascinating article I read this week in The Atlantic, and I just recommend it, about whether our ancestors, I mean, even quite recent ancestors, felt things the same way as we do. And certainly going back to caveman days, how do you know? And yet I think, you know, Homo sapiens is pretty much the same. We have the same mental equipment as our ancestors feel like we probably did. But how do I know that my version of the color blue is your version of the color blue? And so people's experience of content marketing may not be the same. It may not literally be the same now as it was 10 years ago. And I remember psychologically about getting a BlackBerry on to review for a magazine in the late 90s, and just sort of feeling like really shocked about how addictive it was, and now everybody's looking at their screen all the time. Maybe that's done something to our brains. I don't know. But there's quite a lot that's the same. And this gives me hope that there are some immutable principles. First of all, human physiology hasn't changed. People read the same. We have the same equipment, eyes and ears and mouth, and, you know, same sort of brain biology, I think. Human psychology fundamentally hasn't changed that much. And I put this video link, you go Google it, Charlie Munger from Berkshire Hathaway, talking about the psychology of human misjudgment, and I recommend also Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. There are others. I mean, I'm very amateur in this, but our brains are wired to do things. We think heuristically, and we try and solve problems and things like that in certain ways. And so thought leadership has a role in engaging with that. And of course, fundamentally, businesses need to grow. They need to be profitable. They need to generate cash. They need to sell and market to their customers, and so on and so on. I mean, the fundamentals of business haven't changed. So good thought leadership is about helping people. It has to be easy to read and understand. It has to engage with our human physiology. It has to solve people's problems and help them think more clearly. So it has to engage with psychology in a positive way, not in a manipulative or cynical way. And in our B2B marketing context, it has to engage with real business problems and propose well-considered solutions. And I think it's absolutely at the cutting edge of what I would call ethical marketing to do really good thought leadership with these things in mind. And therefore, I think there are some things that are good principles of B2B thought leadership marketing. First of all, you have to earn trust. Right? You have to be trustworthy, and I'll talk a little bit about how to do that. You have to talk to people about their issues in their language in order to earn the right to talk about your stuff in your jargon. So, just me, product, 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 and the man in the mirror problem, and build it and they will come, and all these sort of marketing fallacies that I've talked about over the years. You've got to engage with, go to where they are, talk about their stuff and their problems with your expertise. You've got to show value before commitment. I mean, you've got to. The whole point about thought leadership is actually, look, we're being generous here. And by the way, generosity is a really important sort of principle of reciprocity. And if you want to get cynical about it, it's one of the tools of persuasion. So being generous is also a way of showing value before commitment, before you want something back from somebody. Google's phrase: expertise, experience, authority, trustworthiness. All the time, EE80, think about this. How can we embody this? How can we reflect this? And we'll talk a little bit about this. And of course, good writing. It's still critically important. Norman Nielsen Group published a report back in 2006, I think, called How People Read Online. And they said that if you are concise, scannable, and factual, i.e. not wordy, waffly, easy to read on a screen, and you're not hyping and BSing people, you can actually be more than twice as memorable, engaging, and credible. So, it's not just good writing. I don't mean fancy words and, wordsmithing. I hate that phrase, wordsmithing. It's actually about kind of thinking about how you communicate the information clearly and effectively. This is really a critical thing about thought leadership. Okay, so I've got 6 recommendations about what you have to do to be successful in 2026, and I'm trying to think about those things that have changed and how they're going to continue to evolve and what you need to do about it. And I'm also anchoring all of these recommendations in these immutable principles. Okay, so the first thing I think is, especially as we get canyonfuls of AI slop and AI assisted semi slop, human first authenticity is going to be more important than ever. And don't get me wrong, I'm not an AI Luddite, I'm an AI pragmatist. I really think it's incredibly helpful in lots and lots and lots of ways. But authenticity means AI didn't do this. AI might have helped me do this. It means I turned up. Look, here I am now on a Thursday morning doing this. I'm giving my time. I'm trying to be present for it. Means I made an effort. I thought about it a bit. I'm talking about me doing this, but generally also for thought leadership. It means putting in the work. It means getting the expertise. And if the expert isn't the one writing, it means going and talking to the expert and conveying their ideas. And it means authenticity means drawing on genuine experience and expertise. It's got to come from somewhere other than the sort of cloud of AI knowledge or the cloud of Google. I think this turning up and being human first is a bit like the difference between theatre and TV, right? I mean, TV shows are great, nothing against TV, but they're made, pre-recorded, and watched by millions of people. Live theatre is like a communion between the audience and the performers, and when it's genuinely works, it can be transcendent and very different from the TV experience. They're different experiences, equal in value. But human first authenticity means something like that. It's something like turning up and being on live and on stage. It doesn't mean you have to do it in real time, but it means you have to bring yourself to it. I think it also means original research, new ideas, new insights, data that doesn't already exist. It's coming from something that you're bringing to the conversation. And I think you can do this human first authenticity with things like webinars. Hello, thank you for joining me. Podcasts, videos. You can also bring it through reports with data and analysis. You can also bring it through combining a user's input on a website to, say, a survey or a questionnaire with some kind of coordinated and a personalized response. You can bring it with stories. You can do it with blogs, and you can do it on social media. But it's this finding this human aspect, I think, is going to be really, really important. Now, it might mean you have to do a little bit more work. than perhaps hitherto. It might mean you have to pick your battles. You might go, well, we've got budget, time, and mental capacity for doing one of these things. What's the thing that's going to be the most authentic and human first? It's also going to be whatever you do, you can then use all of these tools to produce other content based on it. So this webinar will be turned into social media snippets. It will be turned into a blog. It will be sent out as an email. I mean, it will become other stuff. So it doesn't mean, it's only the few dozen people who turned up live to watch me talk. It has an afterlife and an ongoing engagement. And indeed, we get more sign-ups for our pre-recorded webinars than for our live ones. So they have this afterlife, this ongoing validity. Okay. Second thing, I've talked about this before, and I did a whole webinar about it, but I think thought leadership is going to require more attention to the mid-funnel. It's going to be less about, not exclusively the mid-funnel, but less about top-of-funnel organic SEO bait or top-of-funnel lead capture. I think the people, as the audiences and the traffic sort of decline a little bit from zero-click because of zero-click search and other things, the traffic you do get, you're going to want to talk to them. They're going to be a little bit more further down their journey. So you're going to want to answer questions they might have about you and your products and services. You're going to want to start surfacing information like that you would normally keep into a proposal document or a presentation proposal or a sales pitch. And an example of this is we recently published our client charter on our website, which is normally something that you wouldn't even see until you'd signed a contract with us. So we've turned that into, it's not quite top of funnel, it's sort of mid-funnel content. It's like, this is kind of what it's like to work with us, because this is the rules of engagement and the charter that we have, the commitments we want to make to our clients about project management and things. So that's an example. Case studies we've been, and again, I'm talking about our experience because we're trying to drink our own champagne. We've been publishing a lot of case studies recently, just again to show what it's like working with us and the kind of results we can do. We've been doing a series of articles for all of our services. There are now articles on our blog about the ROI of websites, or how to calculate the ROI of thought leadership. So again, this sort of mid-funnel stuff, rather than how to write a blog, which is the sort of thing that worked really well about 5 years ago. Okay, so widen the mid-funnel. And if this is an interesting topic for you, go look at my webinar of a few weeks ago. Thirdly, I think content and resource hubs need to evolve, and this is somewhere in Articulate that we need to do a little bit more work. We've got 400 or 500 things on our blog and website that need to be coordinated better, and it's just a little bit of hard work. Here is one that we built for causeway.com, who have a similar amount of content. And what this is trying to do is to allow people to find the best content on the site for the industry they're in, the role they have as an individual, and the problem they're facing right now. So out of that bundle of 400, 500 pieces of content, if I am a specifier in the public sector who's kind of working with road build repair companies, what's the best content Causeway has for me? That is an interesting challenge. So I think this kind of personalization, this sort of integration with CRMs, organizing, and the taxonomy of resource hubs really has to evolve rapidly. I would say 98 in 100 resource hubs that I look at are still categorized by author, some vague tag cloud taxonomy where it was really done for SEO, bogusly thinking about SEO tags, or by chronological order, or by type of content, so podcasts, webinars, blogs. That's not really helpful. That's the 2000s called and wants its blog back. So this needs to evolve. Fourth thing, you've got to offer original and unique insights. If you want to persuade and engage people, the best way to have a good idea is to have lots of ideas, said Linus Pauling. And I think there are a couple of thoughts here that I wanted to share. We did this report for Black Dot where we ran an online survey. We were able to get more than 100 people to complete it. So OSINT, open source intelligence practitioners, so investigators and that sort of thing. So we asked them questions about their use of OSINT, and then I also run a podcast for Black Dot, and I talked to dozens of OSINT practitioners. So that has gone into this report as well. So there's human engagement, and then there's qualitative and quantitative data. And this didn't require us to go off and have Gallup do polls and spend a lot of money on it, but it is genuinely insightful benchmarking data, which that particular industry is in want of. What was interesting about this was we ran these little surveys, and we said, look, if you fill in this form now, we're going to give you an immediate sort of calibration benchmark report about what the answers you've given, and then later when we've compiled it into a proper report, you'll get that too. So there's a little bit of personalization and a little bit of thought leadership right there in the moment when they give that. It's not just fill in this form and you might win a box of chocolates. The other thing that I think is critical, and I was talking to a marketing manager at a company the other day who said, yeah, we really want to do all of this stuff in podcasts and blogs. It's just so hard because the people who've got the expertise are not writers, and they've got jobs, they have to go and invent things and do things. So interviewing is a critical skill for marketers. If you can learn to interview better and extract knowledge from thought leaders and bring that into your thought leadership, this is going to really enliven and enrich the content. So interviewing and research. The fifth thing of the six that I have is around personalization. I think that increasingly integrating websites with CRMs, as you can do in HubSpot and maybe in other things, that kind of personalized benchmarking report that we did for Black Dot and we're doing for a couple of other clients at the moment, segmenting and personalizing emails and really paying attention to not tens of thousands of people, but the hundreds or thousands of people who are your ideal clients and your ideal target personas, and really making sure you're engaging them with the right stuff for them. There's a really interesting book called The Business of Expertise by David C. Baker, who says for most businesses, you probably want a total addressable market of 5 to 10,000 companies who really would benefit from your services and for whom you are a perfect fit. Well, okay, that your numbers may vary and that concept may vary, but the idea that you would go, look, these are our people and we're going to write for them, and when they come to the website, they're going to get a very personalized, tailored experience. This is something that's been harder to do in the past and is getting a little bit easier, I think, particularly with AI, actually. Okay. Lastly, and the sixth thing, I think for thought leadership, you need trust. And I think there are some things that need to happen for thought leadership to be trustworthy or to appear trustworthy. Stephen Colbert had this word when he was playing this character on the Colbert Report. He talked about truthiness. So truthiness is to objective truth a little bit like the cover is to a book. It's a representation or a symbol of what you hope is some underlying validity. So I think when you're writing thought leadership, creating thought leadership, there has to be some clarity about who is creating it and why. What's the benefit? Cui bono? So this is Matthew Stibber for Articulate Marketing talking about this. And obviously we would love to have a sales conversation with you, a pre-sales conversation with you as a result of this this engagement. There you go. That's clarity about who benefits, what our intention is, and who's doing it. And I think you understand that, but at the same time, I hope you understand that I'm also trying to share ideas and thoughts and best practices and advice. Next thing is really important around sourcing. So if you're citing and quoting, tell people where you got that information. I think sourcing is still a practice from journalism that could be very much more used in marketing. I think it lends credibility if you can follow the footnotes. Fact checking, surprisingly not common, or not as common. So clients typically fact check obsessively about, for example, product features and product names and things that are obviously close to the business. I'm not saying they don't care about fact checking, but there's sort of less discipline around it, perhaps, than the product information. And I'm thinking back to my days as a journalist, and I put this on the screen. This was a screenshot from an email I got from an editor at Wired about a 200-word little snippet article I had written about motorways, autobahns in Germany, about there's no speed limit. And I got these questions back, like, is this true? Is this true? How did you authenticate that? They rang up the undersecretary that I interviewed at the German embassy in London and said, now you told Matthew, you're quoted as saying this, is that actually what you said? I mean, that's fact checking. You don't have to go to those lengths. I mean, the fact checking department at the New Yorker is probably bigger than the editorial department. You don't have to do that, but it's interesting to be aware of that as a concept. And I think the last thing is, if you make a mistake or there's something incorrect, you acknowledge it and fix it. And I think this is true for thought leadership. It's true for good journalism. And I think it's the antidote to the rising tide of misinformation and BS that exists in the world at the moment. But that's a separate and perhaps more controversial point. So let's move on. So almost at the end of today's session, I just wanted to say thank you for sitting through this. I hope you found something of value. If you have any feedback or questions, please email me, Matthew@Articulate Marketing, or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you, and I hope I see you again in the new year for our next webinars. Thank you very much indeed. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday.